Welcome to Outside Views. Today we continue our series Briturn, The Obstacles, and this is Chapter 10, Information Society and Media. As we examine the possibility of the UK joining the European Union again, it's essential to remember that this would not be a simple reversal of Brexit. The UK would need to apply as a new candidate and undergo the rigorous EU accession process, adhering to all the requirements for membership. And today's focus is on Chapter 10 of the Acquis Communautaire, the Information Society and Media. The digital and media landscape has evolved significantly over the past few decades, and the EU has established a highly structured regulatory framework to govern it. And the rules outlined in the Acquis cover electronic communications, digital commerce, and the audiovisual services. For the UK, joining the EU again would require full alignment with these rules, many of which have changed since Brexit. And this chapter is crucial as it affects everything from internet governance and telecommunications to media regulation and digital consumer protections. But let's begin with electronic communications. The EU's regulatory framework ensures a competitive and transparent digital market, fostering fair access to telecommunications infrastructure and consumer protections. The aim is to eliminate barriers that prevent the seamless operation of telecommunication services across member states. Before Brexit, UK telecom providers benefited from EU-wide rules on roaming, spectrum allocation, and fair market competition. Since leaving the EU, the UK has diverged in areas such as mobile roaming charges, net neutrality policies, and cross-border telecom regulations. Joining the EU again would require the UK to harmonize its telecommunications regulations, including accepting the jurisdiction of the Body of European Regulators for Electronic Communications, or BEREC, which oversees the uniform application of EU telecom rules. One major post-Brexit change was the reintroduction of roaming charges for UK citizens travelling in the EU. Previously, EU regulations ensured that mobile users could roam like at home, with no extra charges for using their phones abroad within the EU. Since Brexit, UK providers are no longer bound by these regulations, leading to increased costs for travellers. To comply with EU rules, the UK would need to reintegrate into the EU's digital single market, ensuring consumer protections and competition fairness within the telecom sector. And next, let's discuss information society services and electronic commerce, because the EU has developed a comprehensive legal framework to support digital businesses and ensure consumer safety online. This includes regulation on data privacy, cybersecurity, and fair competition in the digital market. The UK adopted the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, during its EU membership, and even after Brexit, it largely retained GDPR standards to maintain data sharing agreements with the EU. However, divergence is possible in the future as the UK government explores modifications to its data protection laws. If the UK were to join the EU again, it would need to ensure full alignment with GDPR and any future updates to EU digital privacy regulations. The EU also has strict rules on online commerce to protect consumers and businesses. The Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act introduce further obligations for online platforms, requiring greater accountability for content moderation, transparency in advertising, and enhanced consumer protections. These regulations aim to curb the power of tech giants while ensuring fair market conditions for smaller businesses. Post-Brexit, the UK has considered alternative regulatory approaches, but joining the EU again would require full compliance with the DSA and DMA, meaning UK-based digital businesses would need to adjust to EU oversight once again. Audiovisual services are another major component of this chapter. The EU's media regulations are designed to ensure freedom of expression, cultural diversity, and fair competition within the audiovisual sector. The Television Without Frontiers Directive, later replaced by the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, governs broadcasting rules across the EU. And this directive ensures that television and video on demand services operate under common standards, including advertising regulations, protection of minors, and promotion of European content. Before Brexit, UK broadcasters benefited from the country of origin principle, which allowed them to be licensed in one EU state while broadcasting across all EU markets. Leaving the EU meant that UK-based broadcasters lost these privileges, forcing many to relocate their licenses to EU countries to maintain access to European audiences. If the UK were to join the EU again, it would need to realign its broadcasting regulations with the AVMSD and participate in EU-wide cultural programs such as Media Plus and Media Training, which support the development of the European audiovisual sector. One key issue in this chapter is regulatory oversight. The EU requires member states to have independent regulatory bodies overseeing digital and media markets to ensure fair competition and consumer protections. The UK's regulatory framework is currently overseen by Ofcom, which previously coordinated with EU institutions. Joining the EU again would require Ofcom to reintegrate into EU structures and cooperate with European regulators on issues such as spectrum allocation, media pluralism, and digital market competition. But how difficult would it be for the UK to complete this chapter? From a technical standpoint, the UK already has strong digital and media regulations that align with at least many EU standards. However, regulatory divergence since Brexit means that adjustments would indeed be necessary. For instance, the UK has pursued its own approach to online content moderation and digital market regulation, which may not fully align with EU policies. Harmonizing these frameworks would be a critical part of the membership negotiations. A major benefit of joining the EU again is access to the digital single market. And this would allow UK businesses and tech startups and digital service providers to operate seamlessly across the EU without the additional barriers introduced post-Brexit. Regulatory alignment would also restore consumer protections in key areas such as mobile roaming, data privacy, and online transactions, benefiting both businesses and, of course, the public. However, there are challenges. Digital regulations are an evolving area of EU policy, with new initiatives regularly introduced to address emerging technologies and market dynamics. And the UK would need to commit to ongoing regulatory updates, ensuring that its legal framework remains aligned with EU developments. Additionally, UK policymakers would need to navigate the political landscape of media regulation, ensuring that compliance with EU rules does not conflict with domestic policies on media pluralism and online content governance. So in conclusion, Chapter 10, The Information Society and Media, highlights both the opportunities and, of course, the obstacles of a potential Briturn. While the benefits of aligning with EU digital and media policies are clear, the process of harmonization would require significant political will, but also public support and regulatory adjustments. For the UK, this chapter is not just about compliance, it's about reintegrating into a rapidly evolving digital and media ecosystem and ensuring that its policies align with European standards for consumer protection, for competition, and for innovation. So thank you for joining me on this 10th step in our exploration of the obstacles to Briturn. And if you found this analysis insightful, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to Outside Views for more in-depth discussions on the policies of our post-Brexit world. And let's continue the conversation in the comments as well. What do you think about the UK's ability to align with the EU's rules on information society and media? I really look forward to your thoughts. And as always, stay informed and see you in the next video. One of those is right here in the end screen.